The topic for today's session is do not try to make her happy. Now let me qualify that statement with a few sentences. Most women fall into two categories. Well, most women from the perspective or from the lens of a man. The first category is a traditional woman. The second category is a modern woman. A traditional woman generally is one that was born prior to the 1960s, but one that may have been born after the 1960s but holds the values, the chastity, the decorum, the principles pre the 1960s. And those foundations are kept close to her heart and used as a guiding mechanism for how she leads her life. A modern woman is one who was born after the 1960s, usually, but it's more of a software installation, more than it is a hardware installation. She believes in modern feminism, womanism, sees herself as a victim, sees herself as being oppressed by men, and therefore as being oppressed by society, living in a patriarchy, upset about anything, insatiable in her thirst, and therefore almost impossible to please. When I say that you shouldn't try to please her, I would like to make it very clear that I am not referring to a woman with a traditional disposition. I am referring to women who are modern women, both in their attitude, philosophy, and actions. You shouldn't try to please a modern woman. Men, and modern men specifically, should not. And the reason is very simple. You will fail. Now, we talk about self-esteem a lot these days. One of the things we forget is that it comes from two words, self and esteem. We call it self-esteem because it should come from self. A lot of modern men these days make the mistake of believing that they are supposed to be everything to the woman, to be her source of happiness, to be her source of protection, provision, to be the one who gets to die for her. We have been raised, most of us, by mothers who desperately vilified what it meant to be a man and praised the foundations of femininity and the importance of being a female. And so many men these days, especially those who are Generation Y and beyond, we find ourselves in a dilemma. We will do anything and everything to please her. And inasmuch as we try, and inasmuch as you try, you will always fall short. So my message to you is, you shouldn't try to please anyone. In a relationship, you should focus on yourself predominantly. The way I see things is that your responsibility is to yourself to be self-sustaining, self-sufficient, self-nurturing, productive, respectful, a law-abiding citizen, loving, caring, honest. And if you focus on being the best version of yourself, the byproduct of that path is that everything that comes in contact with you and everyone that comes into a relationship with you benefits from your wholesomeness. In other words, you have to have water in a cup to be able to pour out to another. And what we find is most men today are empty, but are desperately and urgently trying to pour into women. Women that they love, women that they care about, women that they lust after. The result of which is the woman remains insatiable. Now, I don't see that as an issue. God couldn't, and therefore men should not. Now, we know about stories from antiquities and stories from the last few centuries of the desire of a woman and the pull that can come with being inspired by a woman. And therefore, there is a role that women play in bringing out a man and bringing out a version in a man that he may not realize exists. She might serve as a muse. She might serve as an inspiration. She might serve as motivation. She might even, like Odysseus, be that source of life within that enables him to give up eternity and time with the goddess and to choose a finite experience and travel just for one last touch. So we know the power that a woman has. What is similar amongst a lot of the stories from antiquities or literature is that those women were unique. They were traditional women. They were not modern women. They were beautiful. They were proud. They were kind. And they were content. They had a level of perspective of life that was such and of a certain genre that it wasn't burdensome on a man. Now, these days, modern women will overload you, the man. Now, I often say that whilst your shoulders have been designed, and if you stand upright, and if you stand up with your shoulders back, you can carry any load. But sometimes we carry a yoke that is too heavy for us. And the reason is because that yoke is not supposed to be for our shoulders. Most of the time, the pressure men feel will always and certainly comes from a woman. The desire to please her, the desire to meet her needs, the desire to make her happy, the desire for her to be in a peaceful state. And unfortunately, men are naive in thinking that we can satisfy her thirst. We cannot, and therefore we need not attempt to satisfy that thirst. God could not, and therefore man should not. Now let me take you back to a story that many people believe to be fictional, but a story that more people believe to play a significance in their lives, their religion, and therefore their destiny. The story I have in mind can be found in 3 different works of literature and works of religion. The Christian faith, the Bible, Judaism and the Jewish faith, the Torah, or the Pentateuch. And finally, the Islam or the Islamic Muslim faith, the Quran. In each of those three major religions, which I should say across the whole world, make up about 65% of people. There is a common theme and a common story in the sage books. And it states very clearly that man was made in the image and in the likeness of God. A very profound statement, a statement in many ways that irrespective of your faith, your belief, whether you are atheist or agnostic, or whether you even believe in a different form of religion, in that statement lies the importance of how we are sovereign as individuals and therefore how we are important. That is not my focus, however. But it also goes along to say that having created man in the image of God, it makes reference to the fact that God blesses man. And the man in question is gender neutral. It goes on to say male and female, created in the image of God. The spirit is man. The housing is male and female. The spirit lives within the house. Male and female created, formed in the image of God. Profoundly, the author says, but when the creation was completed, the Creator says, this is very good. And from that story, you see perhaps the root cause of my statement that you cannot please her. The woman's and the female's thirst for more, which I agree with fundamentally. The desire for greatness, wisdom, enlightenment, led to the temptation for which she could not overcome. She had the fruit. Now, that's part of the great adventure of life, and that's not the focus. The focus is that God could not, despite creating something that was very, very good and one he was pleased with. Women will always remain insatiable. There is something in every one of us that is insatiable, men and women. But what I'd like to do is bring that full circle to modern women and use an example of why you, the man, you will always fall short in your attempt to please the woman. We as human beings, we as spiritual beings, but that is my belief anyway, and I could be wrong. We are spiritual beings. We live in a physical body, and we have an intellect, we have a mind. So therefore, the way I see things is that we live in three levels of understanding. We occupy three levels of our personality. The spiritual, which is the top, the mental, and the physical. The physical is where we can look to for evidence. The spirit is the same. That spirit wants more, abundance, growth. The mind is something to be used and conditioned, and therefore difficult to provide the necessary data or information, statistics, to demonstrate my thesis. So the body is where we go to, because we are physical beings as well. Over time, what we found was men and women evolved. The typical modern woman, on the other hand, has taken a different path. Her insatiability knows no bounds, and you see that in modern society today. From the crown of her head to the sole of her feet, we see the thirst for more. Fundamentally not being happy with what you're born with or what you have been gifted. Not being happy with the cards that you were dealt. Now, I should say this, that we are individually creators as human beings, which is an extension of that very image of our original creator that I began the session with. We have been given a mind, and with the mind we can create ideas, and those ideas can formulate and create possibilities and worlds. Those visions are manifest in society today. If you look around, what you find is greatness and things that have been created by both men and women. I also believe that that ability to create was to bring forth something out of nothing. Start with something that did not exist and manifest something that now exists. Enhancements are fine. Unhappiness with what you have is another thing. So self-esteem comes into the picture, self-assurance, self-identity, self-belief, self-worth comes into the picture when unhappiness knocks on the door. And what we find in modern women today, unlike traditional women, was the unwillingness to play the hand that they have been dealt physically. Now, I should make it very clear that I am referring to physically. Traditional ladies and traditional women accept that this is the card that I have been dealt. These are the cards, or this could be the card. And we try to make enhancements. The makeup industry is one method of enhancing what has been given to us within reason. Biology works like a set of rules. The same way you have the football game, there are rules to the game. You're confined to play the game within reason. When you go outside of the boundaries of the game, you're now reaching for much more. In other words, you're building your tower of Babel. You're looking for something much more than what you have been gifted. That goes beyond wanting a better life. Rooted in that thirst is a sense of insecurity, lack of self-identity, lack of self-worth, not being happy with who you are, and therefore recognizing that someone on the outside cannot give you what you lack on the inside. This is where modern men fail. We do not understand that there is nothing that we can do to mend a broken person. Our role is to be available and capable, which means pouring into yourself, being the person that is able to be there when needed, but not overstepping your boundaries and breaking your back and shoulders to satisfy a thirst that is insatiable. From the crown of a woman's head to the sole of her feet, what you find is the evidence that most modern women these days are insatiable. Let me begin from the top, the head. Start with the hair. There are more women, and I know this applies differently to different ethnic groups and different geographical locations, but generally speaking, when I refer to modern women, I'm talking about women in the West, women who have been raised under the foundations of the Enlightenment, Judeo-Christian values, Western civilization, and therefore women born after 1960 and who've been raised under what I believe the feminist religion and the womanist movement. Most women these days are not happy with their hair. So they have fake hair in various colors. Now, it varies per race. Now, I don't have to go into the detail of that. But there is something about not being happy with what you were born with and a desire to cover your hair with something that is artificial constantly. Now, I have no issues with having some extension. But whenever you have 60% or more as artificial, and it covers most of the 30% that remains, then there is something wrong. Men naturally want natural looking women. I have never met in my entire experience men who say, I like a girl with weave, extensions, especially when the extension or the wig or the weave is a different color to her natural color. We move away from the head and we come down to the face. We talk about facelifts, Botox, lip fillers, eye extensions, eyelashes, and all the various, what I call creative ways that women, modern women, have come up with in the pursuit of an image that is very different to what they believe they are on the inside. There are two images we normally have. One is the external image, and the other is the internal image. One of the very pioneering things that I learned was how to accept who you are, and that you cannot make your external self-image act in a manner consistently different for a long period of time to your internal self-image. Like a rubber band, there's a snapback effect. So the way you see yourself on the inside matters more than what is on the outside. And for most modern women, their insatiable appetite leads to the continuous pursuit of something on the outside rather than working on what's on the inside. There's something broken. You can't fix a broken record, men, so you shouldn't. You should be available and capable when she needs you, but you shouldn't break your back trying to mend a broken record. The face of most modern women today have been altered so heavily that you're not sure who you are with. Some men have never seen the natural hair of the women that they call their wives or their significant others. The face has been altered so much. Nose jobs, face jobs, lip jobs, everything has been altered to create something else in someone else, because some of these women are not happy with who they are. We go down to the body. We have people these days enhancing and going for enhancements rather than do the work, exercise, diet, lifestyle, well-being. Most people would rather go for surgeries, tummy tucks, BBLs, and all the other things we get on our bodies. Boob jobs. You know, there was a time when a woman who had a boob job was either considered to be above 40. Today, the average age for women who have fake breasts is about 19. Depending on what country you are in the modern West, between 19 and 21. The number has dropped from 40 down to 19. The significance of that is that as women have become more empowered, and as the feminist movement and the womanist ideology has infiltrated society, women are more free. Women have more access to everything they want. There's equality of opportunity in Western societies, but women are the most depressed, the most unhappy, and you see that manifested in what we do to our bodies. Now there's a saying, your body's the temple of the spirit. So treat your body like a temple. Something you care for, something you recognize that you only get one. Now I often use this analogy and I say, imagine that you were born and at 18 you were told that you can choose any car that you want, but you only get one car for the rest of your life. Recognizing those set of conditions, most people will choose a car that they like, but every day they will nurture the car. They will clean it, they'll make sure it's serviced, they'll make sure that it's checked, to ensure that the longevity of the car is preserved. Today, what we have in modern women is the opposite. Now, let's move away from the body, and we can come down all the way down from the crown of her head down to the soles of her feet. There is an insatiable level of unhappiness, a thirst, an appetite for more. Modern men, you cannot satisfy that thirst. God could not. You, the man, should not. And you have to recognize that the more you try, the more you will fail. So let me leave you, men, with one or two recommendations. And perhaps before I do that, let me make a statement. I started this session by saying that you should not try to make her happy. Obviously, that is tongue-in-cheek. I should make a qualification. If she's a traditional woman, feminine woman, holding on to those values, mores, social and sexual mores, the required decorum, the principles, the precepts, the tenets that are traditional, not antiquated or outdated, but are traditional. A respect for who she is, a proudness, a level of grace that she walks in or walks with, then you should endeavor to make her happy, because she deserves such an effort on your part. On the other hand, if she's a modern woman, you cannot make her happy. The software is not yours to reinstall. The hardware is what it is. The problem is not the hardware, although you can see evidence of attempts to alter the hardware. Everything comes down to the software. And as men, we have to be careful about choosing battles where there are rewards. Most modern women come with battles for which there are no rewards. Focus on yourself. Jim Rohn said, I'll take care of me for you, and now could you please take care of you for me? In other words, I do not like the concept of self-love. But I would say, as a man, one of your responsibilities is to yourself, to bring forward to the world the best version that you can be, to discover your purpose, to fulfill your potential, to achieve success, to generate wealth and prosperity, to be healthy, to be happy as an individual. especially not to take on burdens from another, especially those who are not deserving of such sacrifices. To separate yourself from the pack and to understand and have the discernment and the wisdom to know when the burden is from a traditional woman, which it rarely is, and when the burden is from a modern woman, which it usually is. God could not change her. You shouldn't change or attempt